This video is brought to you by Roll for Combat, an official Paizo actual play podcast. Visit rollforcombat.com today to listen to Agents of Edgewatch and join Basil, Dougie, Gomez, and Lomang as they protect and serve the citizens of Absalom from a mysterious and diabolical plot. Hey everybody, Dave here with another Pathfinder rule reminder for you, and today's question is what happens to a spell effect after its caster dies or falls unconscious? And the answer to that is pretty simple. Really nothing changes. Spells and spell effects and spell durations operate by the same rules when its caster becomes incapacitated or dead as they do when the caster is alive and fully functional. So basically, a spell continues operating within its duration. If you think of magical energy that's being applied at the time of casting a spell as being fuel, then once that fuel is applied to the spell effect, then that spell effect is now independent from the caster, and it's going to keep operating until it runs out of fuel. So even if the caster dies, then it's going to keep going until that duration ends, because that's when the so-called fuel has been used up. Now, there is a important distinction here when we talk about durations, and that is that some spells have durations of, quote, sustained. And when you sustain a spell, when a spell has a duration of sustain, it means the caster must spend an action every one of their turns to feed a little more fuel into it and keep it going until the end of their next turn. And if a full turn passes without them being able to spend an action on a sustain action to keep adding fuel, so to speak, to that spell, then the spell is going to end. And that's the way it works when a caster is upright, and that is how it works when a caster is incapacitated. So let's take a look at a couple of different examples here. The first is going to be Mage Armor. When you cast Mage Armor, its duration says that it functions until your next daily preparations. So if you cast that, and then you get knocked unconscious, and then you gain the dying condition, and you are revived, as long as it happens before your next daily preparations, which pretty much by rule would have to, I think, then when you wake up, that spell, that Mage Armor, is still functioning. You still have that on you. It doesn't go away when you get knocked unconscious, and you do not have to recast it. Now, if we look at another example of a flaming sphere has a duration of sustained up to 1 minute. That means every turn you have to spend one action on the sustain action, and that extends the duration by one more round until the end of your next round, up to a total amount of time of 1 minute. After that, you can't add any more fuel to the spell. It ceases, and you would have to cast it again if you wanted it to be functioning. So if you cast that spell and then you get knocked unconscious, or you even gain the dying condition, then as long as you regain consciousness and you regain the ability to act before the end of your next turn, then you can still spend that action and keep it going. It doesn't automatically end when you fall unconscious. Now, this does make an interesting situation in that when you get knocked unconscious, you move in the initiative order. Your place in the initiative order changes to be directly before the effect that caused you to fall unconscious. So in that case, you're going to want to make sure that the spell is also ticking at the same time. So the time in which you have is still going to be until the end of your next turn. It's going to be the end of your next turn after that turn has been adjusted in the initiative order for being knocked unconscious, not where it previously would have been. And if you, for some spell effects that are not sustained but are still a specific number of rounds regardless, then if the caster is killed and removed from the initiative tracker, you're still going to want to keep a note in the initiative tracker for when those spells are going to tick down on every turn, even though the caster has ceased. So that's it. In a nutshell, spells and spell durations don't change just because a person has been knocked unconscious. If they're knocked unconscious and they come back and they're back in the fight, then any spells that they had prior to that will still be functioning as long as it's still within their listed duration. And sustained spells, then as long as you get up in time to sustain it again, it can keep on persisting and going up until the limits of its duration. As always, if you have any suggestions for future rule reminders, please let me know in the comments. I'll make sure to leave links to all my other videos that deal with spellcasting and spell durations and the sustain action. I'll leave links to those in the description of this video as well. And as always, thank you very much everybody out there and everything you do to support me in this channel, whether that's through liking these videos, leaving a comment, sharing the videos with your friends, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon. I really appreciate everything the community does to support me. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.